Welcome to our day 3 of our survivorship week, 2021. And we want to start this session as a question and answer session with Victoria English Martin, who is an integrative nutrition coach, a fitness coach, cancer survivor, and here to talk to us about things that come up since your talk and how you told us your story. And within that story, you wove in lessons and awareness and things that really can be helpful to all patients, whatever they're going through, and all people, whatever they're going through, because life is very challenging. And we can find that there are things that are going on within us that we're trying to deal with in ways that maybe don't serve us as well as we would want them to, or that they can. So, yeah, I want to just also say that your session initially on Monday was the most popular session. So I'm
Thank
really glad that you were able to reach out to all those people because, again, your story was absolutely riveting and powerful and passionate and compassionate. And then you wove in lessons and insight and, commonalities that many people have, again, with cancer or with any type of major illness or just with the life stresses.
hmm
So it was invaluable. So thank you. And please know that even though you're in your car and even though it was just the craziest situation ever, it was one of our most impactful talks.
Oh,
So that was great.
thank you. It's a huge honor to be able to just support people wherever they are in this journey, because as you know, doing what you do, and certainly all of the active treatment patients, and then the survivors post treatment, um, this is always part of our story, and it manifests in different ways. Um, like I said in my conversation with you all, obviously alcohol misuse is a big one, that can show up, in sometimes, not always, but in sometimes a very obvious way when it impacts things like our liver enzymes or
Mhm.
our relationships or our ability to just get through our days. But it shows up in different ways. And I like to say that the experiences we go through are different, but the feelings are the same. So
Mhm.
the coaching that I do is really about the feelings, not necessarily the specific experience. So that's why it was just a huge honor to be here with you and just share whatever might be helpful to others.
Well, maybe we can start with, so you told us your story and the challenges that were coming up. What was the next step? What first happened after you became aware of what was impacting you from the treatment and
hmm
the effects afterwards?
hmm Do you mean after the liver enzyme conversation or just in general?
Yeah, maybe that. Like, where did you go for support? Where did you start? What was your launching pad from that aha moment?
Yes. And that it was an aha moment because it was, when you're engaged in any maladaptive coping skill, it's incredible how we find ways to justify it. Even though, again, whether it shows up in something concrete like a liver panel, or if it's something more subtle where you know that you're just missing out on the best life you could live. In my case, alcohol did begin to tell me those lies again because I was so unhappy and so depressed. And the old conversation that alcohol would have with me started again. And so, of course, I justified it. But there's no justifying elevated liver enzymes. So I had a very clear fork in the road. I knew that I had to do something. And if I was going to choose the path to health and peace, it was going to take a tremendous amount of effort. So I made the decision. And again, at the time, I wasn't able to do it for myself. I didn't have that level of self love or compassion, but I had it for my children and I had it for my friends. And like I said, I had it for strangers on the street. And so I decided to go after health and healing with the same perseverance with which I went after my cancer. And so I dedicated a lot of time and resources to finding that healing. Um, the first thing I did was get a therapist, a really good therapist who understood not only breast cancer, but um, self sabotage. And that was a big step. And that was where I was able to be vulnerable and share everything I was feeling. This hatred, taking responsibility for. Looking back, it's ridiculous that I took responsibility for the fact that there was still live cancer present at the time of mastectomy. Um, but what she helped me understand is that after all of that treatment, our brain, our cognitive function is not optimal. And so I encourage people to find a trusted professional with whom they can just spill it, because I was saying things that certainly made no sense. And I knew that, but I didn't realize how much they weren't making sense until later, as my brain started to heal from all of the treatment. And also, as I started to heal from all of the physical and emotional trauma that cancer brings. So the therapist was my first step. The next step, um, after treatment, it was way too soon to have taken on this challenge, but I had decided I was going to do a 14er. A 14er is when there, Colorado has the most of any state. It's a mountain that has a 14,000-foot gain in elevation. I had no business doing that, but I couldn't relate to my body as it was then. I related to my body as it was before cancer and expected my body to be able to do that. Well, I ended up sick and I ended up with cellulitis and I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. So that was my body screaming at me, we are not ready for this. And that's when I decided to embrace something I wasn't familiar with, because I did Pilates, but then I also had done the most extreme type of yoga in the past. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to do anything dramatic. I'm going to do something gentle. So I learned gentle yoga. And that taught me to honor my body. The other thing I did is I spoke with a spiritual advisor. And I practice the Christian faith, so it was in my church, and spoke with them about what was happening and the spiritual struggles that I was having, and so I worked on that part.
Well, it's exciting that 4 of the 5 things that you just mentioned, we have here at the Barbara L.
Yeah.
Posner Wellness and Support Center. So we have our behavioral health counselor, we
Mm-hmm.
have the spiritual care, I guess it's 3 out of 4, and we have the yoga. We don't have the 14,000-foot altitude gain,
That's okay.
but
None of us have any business on those right now,
that's
anyway.
right. That didn't serve you anyway. So,
Right.
okay.
And I would encourage anyone who hears this, even if you think, oh, I don't need that. I don't need gentle yoga. I don't need a counselor. Why not give it a shot? What do you have to lose? Maybe allow yourself, say, you know what, I'll commit to 5 yoga sessions. I'll commit to 5 meetings with this counselor, because you have nothing to lose.
Mhm.
And you may discover something about yourself or the world, and that may help you walk through the world in a healthier way.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that I hear a lot of people say, not quite the question, but a lot of issue that they have is just being overwhelmed with so many things to do, so many appointments,
Mhm.
so, taking care of the kids or going to work. How did you find yourself overwhelmed? I'm sure during treatment, but when you started this kind of healing, more physical, emotional, spiritual healing, how did you manage, not taking on too much or getting
Mhm.
overwhelmed with it all?
That's a great question. And as we come out of treatment and we start to make these slow changes, we become more and more in touch with what we need and what we can handle. And these are things which are meant to add to, not take away. And so if you can, I would, I made it like I said, I knew I had to make it a priority. And yes, the alcohol was the glaring problem. But those other things that I mentioned, the isolation, the depression, the anxiety, the fear, the body dysmorphia, dissociated from my body, I was experiencing all of those things. So you don't have to have a major blow up in your face thing like I had, like I was beginning to have, as was evidenced by that liver test, liver enzyme. But it's only natural if you've gone through something like this that you are going to need to take measures to practice care. It's not being, just like getting chemo is not selfish, just like getting radiation is not selfish. This is not selfish. This is an investment in yourself, which is going to have a ripple effect to everyone around you.
Um, and I think also that, you had a concrete liver enzyme that gave
Mm-hmm,
you information about what was going on that you weren't ready to address or didn't know you needed to address
mm-hmm,
necessarily. But if someone goes into therapy or starts to meet with a therapist or a spiritual provider, which again, we have those
mm-hmm.
here, those things will start to come up when you start to talk about your feelings and your emotions, and the isolation will come up, and then you'll just again have more awareness to what's going on and what things you might need. So yeah, it's really good that you're recommending that, to sit down with one of our therapists to
Yeah.
just talk, and just maybe nothing's going to come up. Maybe you're doing really well, and we hope that everyone is doing
Mm-hmm.
really well. But it could be that you start to have a safe place to express what's going on, find that you're isolated, find that you have the body dysmorphia more
Right.
than you realize, or a total dissociation from yourself because of all that's going on and how traumatic that can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I really like that idea too, again, because not everybody's going to have such a red flag like you did, but
Right.
there's still going to be issues. And what about also support groups? Did you do support groups? How did you feel about that?
I did. I did some support groups over at my center, which was Rose Medical Center here in Denver. That was helpful. Um, it's again, I think you're shortchanging yourself if you don't take advantage of the resources. And with time, as I said, when you become more in touch with what's going on, you'll find what works best for you. And that may not be the most comfortable thing. You may prefer a support group over a counselor, but perhaps the counselor is what's really helping you dig in and find what's going on. And one thing I did, which I now understand was misguided thinking, is I would compare traumas. I would say,
Mhm.
well, I don't know why I'm kind of a mess. I mean, it could have been worse. So if you find yourself saying, it could have been worse, I'll be fine, take a moment and reflect on that, because yes, it could have been worse. We are all here, and that's a good thing. We all know people in this journey who are not. So yes, it could have been worse, but you have been through something huge. So don't minimize it. You don't have to go digging too deep and say, well, there must be something, I must be a mess on some level. You might not be a mess. It
Right.
may just be that, you know, this was a big thing. Let me talk about this. Let me think about perhaps how I could relate better to my children. It's an opportunity for growth. It could be that maybe your children don't know how to talk about what they've seen you go through, and you don't know how to talk to them about it. That's what counselors are for. Perhaps you've done different sorts of exercise and now that doesn't feel so good for your body. Give something else a try. It's just an opportunity. And it's so, I think as a survivor, we owe this to all the men and women who have gone before us, whether they made it out of cancer or not. There's a reason that these wellness centers exist now. It's because thankfully there are more cancer survivors than ever before. And the professionals have seen that we need that support. So I think that in a way, we are honoring those who have come before us by taking advantage of this. And we are paving the way for the ones who will come after us to say, look, this is what could help. This is going to be hard. This is not easy. Yes, there could be worse things. Yes, it could be better, but you have an opportunity here. And so take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think that you're speaking to the different stages that you go through emotionally. Well, certainly we know the physical stages you go through, but the emotional stages, um, it just are, I hear it, every day that, well, I don't think I need this group support or the, one-on-one mentoring support. But that might be now, and it might not fit, but don't forget that there are all these different things to keep trying to
Mhm.
have growth. And I love what you said. And it's maybe not to find a problem or it is to fix the problem, but in general, it's the idea that, where's your opportunity for growth? Where's your opportunity for a better quality of life, a
Yeah,
better, all over physically, mentally, emotionally life. You
right.
have the opportunity now with the resources that we have here and
Mhm.
with your passion for, growing and feeling better because you've not felt well and you've been
Exactly.
sick. So,
Sometimes there may be things that you think you don't need, but what if someone needs you? What if showing up in a support group gives someone else something that they really need?
mhm,
What if someday you get to mentor someone who just had her diagnosis and is absolutely lost?
right.
Sometimes again, being of service to others can be what we carry into the world after what we've been through.
Sure. And knowing when it's the right time for that, because it might be a worse time and you don't need to do that to yourself. And
Absolutely.
getting
Yes.
in touch with
Yes.
that.
Don't
It
be.
doesn't feel right now. And I love when I hear people say, oh, that support group was not right. I didn't need to hear some of that information at where I was in my journey. But then at other times it's like, oh, it's my safest, best place. So that's
Mhm.
what I mean to say about, knowing where you are in the different stages of all of this. So
Yes.
again, a therapist, it ties back to a therapist, it ties back to yoga, it ties back to all the things that help you become more aware, self-aware.
So that you
And
know where you are in your journey and you can say, I'm ready for that, or you know what, I'm not ready for that. One of the
yes.
greatest gifts I've carried through all of this is that now I am we I still don't have the energy and stamina that I had before cancer. I don't know if I ever will. My thyroid's fried. I have a frog in my throat half the time. And I am very aware of all of that. And so I've learned through the support that I've gotten, through the work that I've done, body, mind, spirit, how to have healthy boundaries and to know
Mhm.
when to say, this is enough. I've done enough. I'm not burning myself out. I'm not hobbling myself for anyone or anything. And I think especially for women, that is a
Absolutely. And I mean, you look so vibrant, so energetic, so everything is together. But I have to assume you're human and you have bad days.
Mhm.
And, you just have the tools now to it's a bad day and you just have to move on and then there's good days, but you're so much more aware because you're not covering it up with things that aren't serving you or maladaptive
For sure.
behavior and you're comfortable being uncomfortable. It's pretty darn hard to do that, but it's almost to me it's the golden rule, to be able to
Yes,
feel that and just say it's okay, it's a bad day, it's a bad hour, it's got to get better.
absolutely. And if any of us who have been through treatment, I mean, if we have been stripped of our external armor to varying degrees. And so anyone listening to this has gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable. We had to save our lives. So we can do these things. We can carve out some time for ourselves. We can carve out a little respite when we need it. We can get out of a different kind of comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you, a lot less uncomfortable than treatment.
Wow. So what would be, I mean, I guess we've talked a lot about what your first steps are. Um, but again, what's the first step that you would give somebody who feels that they, are more aware now and they need to do something?
Mm-hmm.
What's the first step that you would say that they could do?
That's a great question. A tool that I use with many of my clients, and not all of my clients struggle with alcohol. Sometimes they're just struggling with identifying their feelings. They feel stuck in life. It takes on so many different shapes, forms. So the first thing is to assess your readiness for change. Um, are you, are you oblivious that you need anything? Are you sort of now in what we call the pre-contemplation stage, where you're like, I need to do something. Yeah, maybe next week. I don't have time right now. In that phase, I would say if you're a cancer survivor, you know that life is short and unpredictable. So I give them a little nudge to get them to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
Why wait? Time is fleeting. Don't let anything steal time from you ever again. Then there's the preparation stage where they're like, okay, I've looked at those yoga classes and I know I've got some yoga clothes in the closet, or I know where I can get some. Okay, yeah, I could go like on Wednesday. That's a good stage. But that's like the ripe stage.
Yeah.
And then it's about creating a new habit, creating, and that takes one thing, and that is consistency. So that's why whenever someone is contemplating and then preparing for something, I say, I really would like, I really suggest committing to at least 5 to 10. 5 yoga classes, maybe I can get them to 10 if they're on the further side of preparation. Um, and that's empowering because then they have that commitment and that accountability. And then once they get there, then I do a reflection with them of like, well, what's changed? Well, by the end of 10 yoga classes, of course, as you know, Jenny, there's a list of things that have changed or are beginning to change. And that's just positive reinforcement. And that's where a lot of the work I do is around the neural pathways of the brain and literally training our brain to think differently, feel differently, and believe true things instead of the false things which we say in our head.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a lot often just lies, like my lie that I believed that it was my fault there was still some cancer at mastectomy time. Sounds crazy to me now, but I believed it. But it takes those changes and that positive reinforcement to literally create neural changes in the brain so that then you get to the wonderful stage of maintenance and honing, where you say, okay, this is now a habit. Yoga is something I do now. I never thought I'd be a yogi person, but I am. And then you get to say, well, maybe I'll try this type of yoga. Maybe I'll try that type of yoga. Maybe I'll go to a yoga retreat, and that's what's so fun, because then people start to expand their vision of the
Right.
world and what is possible. Because we all know when we're going through this and when we're just out of it, the world seems very, very small and limited. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's the stuff that creates real change in someone. That's why my alcohol patterns are now really, really changed. Because not only did I take it out of my system, but I created a new way of thinking and a new way of living so that now, you know, I I drank maladaptively for several years. So if I walk by a patio and there's a clink clink of the beautiful glasses and the sun is shining, it looks so attractive, I can look at it and think, yep, that does look attractive. But then I can also play it forward. We don't, that's a snapshot. We don't know what those people on the patio are going to be doing 3 hours later. Um, and I can play it through. Not only that, but I've created other things that are fulfilling to me. So that is something I look at and say, that used to serve a purpose and now it doesn't anymore. And that can manifest as your thinking, your self-esteem, your body image. I can look at my body now. I have big scars across my my implants. That hasn't changed, but it used to have such pain attached to it and such and grief and self-criticism. Now I look at it and I think, I'm really sorry that I went through that. And it's okay. And these scars are why I'm still alive. And I couldn't have said that to myself a few years ago because my brain wouldn't have believed it. So it takes time. And eventually your brain, that's like that morning I woke up and I said, I love you, Victoria. And I believed it.
Right.
And so change is possible, but you do it slowly and you do it in ways that are authentic to an individual.
I love the idea of the yoga and doing agreeing to 5 sessions or 10
Yes.
sessions, but then you talked about like a reward at some point, which might be a yoga retreat. And it just brings me to the idea of like a lot of times we'll talk about, well, what's the reward for what you've gone through?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a fancy dinner out, or like you said, it could be drinking, or it could be just something that again isn't good for you. But wow, one day those transmitters, those neurotransmitters are different, and you're like, a
Yes.
yoga retreat would be the best thing ever. Or, a healthier, dinner that I make with my family and we play around in the kitchen and we
Mm-hmm.
work with different types of ingredients and things. It's just beautiful how things can change so fundamentally like that, and rewards are far different than anything we've ever been used to, or that
Yeah.
there's socialization around that the social media tells us this is what's the best, most great way to relax or to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate. It can just be you have the opportunity to redefine it, re-envision it. It's really great opportunities.
Oh yeah. Most of the ways that society promotes relaxation, all that is a thinly veiled way to put money in other people's pockets.
Mm.
That we need alcohol. Well, who's benefiting from alcohol? The people who sell it. But they sell us that lie and we believe it. And they do the same thing with, clothing, the clothes you have to wear. What defines a woman and what's sexy? Now I understand that what's sexy and attractive in a woman is confidence and loving your body for what it's been through, not hating it. And having confidence to go into the world and say, I don't drink or I don't eat that food because it's not good for my body. Not in an evangelical way. I am not evangelical. People can have their drinks. What good for you? But understanding what serves me, what serves you as an individual, and then having the confidence to step into that. And that's not something that can happen overnight. That's why it takes small little changes again that your brain can believe and follow through with. And then the next thing you know, you are signing up for that yoga retreat. You are confident going to any party and not drinking. You are confident with a style of dress that maybe you didn't think you would be comfortable with before cancer, but now you realize, this suits my body now. It's worthwhile.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you for this, and we'll look forward to talking again on Friday morning, um, and just kind of going over more. You had when we first met and talked, you talked about different tools that you use or different
Mm-hmm.
techniques to help people maybe uncover some of the things. So I know we certainly could go and see a therapist. We can, but I know you have some nice more concrete things that we can, remember, write down on a piece of paper and keep with us. So maybe we can talk about that on Friday morning a little bit more.
Absolutely. You have some great tools, some self-assessment, just kind of figuring out, is your life what you want it to be? And if not, what are some small changes that you can start with? Because I never want to overwhelm anyone, especially after what we've all been through. So absolutely, I'd be happy to share.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good
Thank you.
afternoon, and we'll touch base on Friday, Saturday, yeah, Friday morning.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for the
All right,
opportunity.
Victoria. Thank
Take
you
care.
again. All right. Bye-bye.